Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the invitation from Thai DC just a few days ago. I want to thank you all for being here. I know there were some driving challenges. I had them as well, and I want to all thank the folks who are viewing us online. Wherever you're viewing, it's probably a very early good morning, or maybe even a good afternoon, depending on where you're watching. For those of you who aren't here geographically, I live in Bowie. And so if you don't know where Bowie, for where I sit, is on the other side of the planet. And so I had to get up this morning, I had to drop my dog off at doggy daycare. I had to take care of that little matter and then get here. And I was actually pleasantly surprised it only took me a little over an hour to get here. So for those of you that don't know, the DMV, that's actually pretty good for being here in the area. So let me do a couple of things this morning, but I really want to hopefully spend time hearing from you all and from folks who are out there about what we're doing now. Y'all invited me here. I'm here in Virginia, but as soon as I'm all about Maryland, so I'm going to try my best to talk about the DMV, but at the end of the day, I know people who are watching me in Maryland are going to make sure that he talk about Maryland because I want to keep my job a little bit longer because I love what I do in Maryland. For those that don't know, TEDCO. TEDCO is a 23-year-old entity that's an instrumentality. What does that mean? Well, that means some days I'm a state entity, sometimes I'm not, and it depends on, right now we're going through the state budgeting process, so right now I'm a state entity. We're a 23-year-old entity that has had over a $2.5 billion impact on the state of Maryland through the creation of more than 12,000 jobs, investing. We've had a follow-on investments of about over $1 billion in follow-on investments. We have a number of vehicles. We really have two parts to TEDCO. Most people know about the funding side of TEDCO, which I will talk about. But there's actually another part, a foundational side. And by the way, I grew up Catholic. But I grew up Catholic in Texas, which is a real strange thing to be a black person growing up being Catholic in Texas, for those that don't know. But I was heavily influenced by a bunch of black Baptists. So a lot of what I'm going to say has a lot of alliteration into it. In other words, the same words that start with the same letter. So bear with me because that's just the way that I talk and the way that I was taught. So we have a funding side and a foundation side. And so I'm going to start with the foundation side because that's a lot what you talked about, Sunny, is that because it's not just about the money for these entrepreneurs. What they really need are this other stuff. And so for TEDCO, what we have this entity called Network Advisors. We have loaned executives. We have a great program through one of our funding vehicles. One of our funding vehicles called the Builder Fund. The Builder Fund is focused on, we have to say this in Maryland, I don't know if I want y'all to say in Virginia, but it's focused on socially, economically disadvantaged individuals. People of color and women, but we can't, in rural, we can't say that in Maryland for some reason. And we've put over $1.1 million into 17 companies, but we've also had over 4,000 hours of executive coaches that we've paid for out of that $1 million. It's a tremendously successful program. So of the 17 companies over the last 3 years, of those 17 companies, 9 of them have gone on to raise almost $20 million in follow-on funding just in the last 3 years. And so because of that success, the state is now going to be giving us in the next 3 years, we'll have almost $8 million for the Builder Fund. But I'm going to talk more about what we're doing around social impact funds in a minute. But on the foundation side, so we have network advisors, we have loan executives, we have over 30 incubators and accelerators in the state of Maryland, many of which we used to fund through another entity. We're trying to get that back, but we have relationship to those incubators across the state of Maryland, We have efforts in our rural areas of our state as well as our urban areas of the state. So we've had an effort called the Rural Business Innovation Initiative, or RBII. We have divided the state into 4 regions, put a TEDCO individual in each of those regions, and they really become part of that ecosystem in that region to the point of understanding the education of higher learning, the economic development agencies, the county governments, and we've been able to invest in a number of very powerful organizations to the point. For instance, one of the companies called HopFlight was just named, the governor named the Fast 20 in the state of Maryland, and HopFlight is one of our rural companies that was named to this. So not only do we provide coaching to these rural opportunities, we actually provide funding to them as well, and HopFlight is one of our success stories. We recently launched an effort into our urban areas. We realized that there's a lot of work, and it's a different type of work in our urban areas. So we just launched the Urban Business Innovation Initiative, or UBII, and we're piloting that in Baltimore City and in Prince George's County. The goal there is to do the same thing for urban entrepreneurs, and early successes are showing up there. We have market databases that we have that we let our people get. So we have a number of things. We have an expo similar to this, where we bring people together. Because of COVID, we didn't do it this year. So this year, I have to call out our marketing team, Tammy Thomas and her team. We've had a number of pop-ups. We did a pop-up in Baltimore City. We just did one a few weeks ago in Prince George's County to bring smaller groups of people together safely, and we'll be doing that across the state of Maryland. So again, to allow individuals to come together and have a chance like you guys are doing here today. But on the funding side, we have two big types of vehicles across three different types of tranches. So we have, many of you may be familiar with our stem cell research. We actually invest in Maryland in stem cell research. It's across a range of opportunities that we do our stem cell research investment in. Those are primarily grants that are done through stem cell research. And it's not just with universities. These are with companies who are doing clinical work or doing clinical trials in the state of Maryland. They don't have to be in the state of Maryland, those companies, but the trial does have to be in the state of Maryland. We also do the technology transfer through an effort called Maryland Innovation Initiative, or MII, with our 5 research institutions, those 5 being Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, Baltimore, University of Maryland, College Park, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and then the HBCU, Morgan State University. We provide the funds so they can do that technology transfer, that translational research from the lab to and come to one of our venture capital products. We also do that with our federal labs. Many of you probably know Maryland has more federal labs than all the other states. And so we have a lot of work that we do with NIST. In particular, we have a FAST grant, and we have an SBR lab, which I would encourage those that are listening and those here may apply for. Our SBR lab is one of the most successful in the country, to the point that people of color and women who graduate from our SBR lab have a 2-time success rate over the national average for getting SBR funding. So we're very excited about that, and we've had some additional monies to scale that up, and you hear me use the word scale here more. Then you move into our venture products. We have I already mentioned the Builder Fund, a very successful Builder Fund. That then moves to our seed funds. We have seed funds around technology commercialization, GAP, life sciences, and cyber. We have a new one called the Inclusion Fund, which is meant to be the graduating fund for the Builder Fund. It allows us, many times our Builder Fund companies aren't quite ready for some of our seed funds, so we now have a fund to invest in them all. And then finally, we have the Maryland Venture Fund, which allows us to invest at $750,000 to $1.5 million to $2 million in Series A, Series B type of placements. And so these have all been very successful. So that was kind of a setup for TechCo, probably longer than I wanted. But let me spend a minute very quickly so I can get the questions around where we're going. And so we're in the process of presenting to our board our strategy. We're actually going to be showcasing it. Some of you might get invited to some stakeholder groups that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. And the strategy is really going to be around how do we bring real impact around what we're calling a triple bottom line. Not just a double bottom, but a triple bottom line. The first bottom line is fiscal returns. We have the Maryland Venture Fund that I just mentioned is actually an evergreen fund, so we have to make money. We have to make money. And actually, we just looked at some statistics from PitchBook. Our returns over the last couple of years actually would put us, right there with traditional venture capital funds, even with our limitations of only having to invest in Maryland and some of the other limitations that we have. So we actually are pretty good investors. The second bottom line is socioeconomic. Being an instrumentality of the state of Maryland, we are, at the end of the day, we're not just investors, but we're also creating jobs, as I mentioned before, and creating a tax base and creating that follow-on, creating capital inflows into the state of Maryland. The third one is the newer one. We're going to be looking at opportunities that drive social impact and social innovation. And allow me to spend a minute on those two because that leads into the broader strategy and get to my close. So on social impact, and I see up here, part of the vision is creating wealth and opportunities communities, and that's very much what we're talking, because I actually argue that if you talk about wealth creation, all that really does is create wealth for those who already have. if we really are about making a difference with this, we have to be about wealth expansion and wealth inclusion. We have to invite those who have not been invited, and we have to make sure that those who've been excluded are included. That includes full communities. And then with the technologies that we have, we should be trying to not just make money, but address real issues that really are impacting many of these communities. And so that's the social innovation. And how do we use this to drive that? So as you do a strategy, and you mentioned that I used to be a consultant, so I used to work at this little firm called McKinsey for a couple of years. And then, yes, I started a venture capital, a money management firm. And by the way, I have to do a quick aside to Colin Powell, because I got to interact with Colin Powell a couple of times, several times actually. So when I left McKinsey, I started a family investment office venture capital firm that I still advise called Gulf South Capital. And it was the family monies for a guy named John Palmer. None of you probably know who the hell John Palmer is, but you know his company. His company started with SkyTel. And so I managed that money and still advise him on a number of items. And so John got named to be the ambassador to Portugal right after 9/11. And so because it was 9/11, John was getting sworn in here in D.C. And by the way, John lives in Jackson, Mississippi. There's a whole story around Jackson. Yes, I've lived in Jackson, Mississippi. And so it was in Jackson, Mississippi. And only the family could come to the swearing-in ceremony. John got me invited to this. So in this big opulent room there in the State Department, Colin Powell, General Powell walks in, greets John and his family. Again, I'm the only black guy there other than Colin Powell. I'm the only black guy in the room. Colin Powell runs over to me, hugs me like we're old Army buddies, and starts talking to me as if like I've known him my whole life. He knows more about me than I know about myself. Because, you got to give a pint of blood and all this other stuff to get in. This is after 9/11. We stay in touch quite a bit afterwards. And then time passes, and I got a chance to become the executive vice president and COO at Howard University. And my interview panel was Governor Wilder, Vernon Jordan, and General Powell. This is my interview panel to interview at Howard. I know, an amazing group. And Powell remembered who I was, and he talked, and we stayed in touch afterwards. So I just, great, he was a great American, and I truly miss him. So anyway, as we think about what we're going to do here at TEDCO going forward, the question is always, as a consultant, what's the question? What's the question you're trying to address? So the question that we're trying to address is, I believe, that there are three things that every entrepreneur lacks. They lack access to time, they lack access to talent, and remember I told you about alliteration, and they lack access to treasure. So our job at TEDCO is to give them back a minute, give them access to better and more diverse talent, and help them find X marks the spot. That's what we're trying to do at TEDCO. And so how do we do that? We do that through three things. We've got to, in Maryland, and I think in the DMV as well, as I was telling somebody this morning, we got to rethink who we are comparing ourselves to and who we're competing against. We want to compare ourselves. We keep saying we're competing against the Californias and the Massachusetts and the Austin, Texas, maybe, or the Pittsburghs and the South Floridas, maybe. But I would argue that's comparative. We're competing against China. So to do that, we got to scale this thing. We got to find a way to add a zero. Where we're investing $50 million into something, we need to start investing $5 billion. And we're investing $5 billion, we need to start investing $50 billion. So the second thing we've got to do is we got to stitch these things together. In Maryland, again, I don't know, and again, I wish my friend Bob was here from Virginia CIT. He and I spent a lot of time talking about, even though our money can't flow across the Potomac, ideas and talent and our companies can, and we're working to make sure that our portfolios have time with one another. So we got to stitch things together, and we got to stitch the scaling, and we got to scale the stitching. We just have to get to a different level, and we can't have duplicity, and we can't have replication and duplication of efforts, particularly in Maryland. And the last thing, and I'll close, is if we're going to scale and we're going to stitch, we got to storytell. And we got to storytell, though, in a data-based way that changes how we tell the story. And the example I use in this is, and I'll ask this question, If a Maryland company or a Virginia company has a job posting and hires somebody from California, and that person stays in California, or vice versa, the California company hires somebody who lives in Virginia and they stay in Virginia. Here's the question. Is that the definition of job growth for Virginia? Because the definition of job growth was the job was in that physical thing. My point being, in this post-COVID era, the traditional metrics of economic development, we have to rethink people. We have to fundamentally rethink them differently. And I don't pretend I know them. We're working with some great people in Maryland. Love to work with the folks in Virginia as well to think about what those look like. I think they look more like talent attraction and talent retention. I think they look more like capital inflows and capital outflows. But there are a new set of metrics, because I would argue to you, and I'll close and take questions, that what we have as metrics today at best are not telling the full story, but at worst telling a lie. And so, look, I am excited about what we do in Maryland. I'm excited about what we can do for the DMV. Obviously, Amazon coming changes the game for many of us. But more importantly, it's about how do we create opportunities for those who have not. And I didn't say this before. Let me actually do close on this. And back to, because I'm an engineer, computer scientist by training, but I like English, and I like studying. So when I say the word entrepreneur, I bet you anyone in this room will think you're really talking about founder. I know a ton of serial entrepreneurs, I being one of them, who've never really founded a company. They were employee number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a company. So the question is, and I use our friends at Johns Hopkins as my example, when we go and invest in the next Johns Hopkins spin-out, which kind of happens almost on a semi-daily basis, because I want to make sure that they are introduced to a different orbit. I want to make sure, I can't force them to hire somebody from a Bowie State or Coppin State or Frostburg State, but I at least want to introduce them to somebody else, because here's the deal. Here's the deal. I grew up, as I said, in Houston. I actually got to I worked at Johnson Space Center. Actually, I'm going to age myself. I actually wrote some code when they were dropping the space shuttle off the top of the 747s. I was in high school. This is true. I was in high school. I wrote some telemetry code. And so I wanted to be an astronaut. So I talk about this notion, folks, of orbits. And we got to find ways for orbits to collide. And when orbits collide, they create a new gravitational constant that attracts other orbits. And that's what we got to do for employees 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have to have ways to force those orbits to collide so that we can create more opportunity and more inclusion and more expansion to those who've not been included in those orbits before. So thank you again, Sunil. I'm more than here to take some questions. Thank you for your time and attention. And your name is? Hey, Sandy. Good. I think I'm about to give you a mic here so you can, so everybody can hear you.
Hi, Sandy Mestry.
Hey, Miss Sandy.
Hi. I'm really excited about everything you're talking about. Can you talk more about and share with us more about the social impact and social innovation?
Yep.
And some ideas or what you've, some approaches to that, because it's very interesting. Obviously, it's very critical for our success moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I didn't get to spend time on that. So, as I mentioned, on our venture portfolio side, led by our Chief Investment Officer, Jack Miner, he's created three vehicles. We're going to have a social impact vehicle, which we'll include into that the Builder Fund that I mentioned. We're going to have our seed funds that I talked about, and then our Maryland Venture Fund. So back to social impact. We're going to look at 2 opportunities in social impact, Sally. We're going to look at I just told you that we've had this evergreen, and most of our funding is evergreen, so we've got to make money. And so we're going to, the whole point of the first money that TEDCO puts in, as I was just telling an entrepreneur just yesterday, our goal isn't that you get money from TEDCO. Our goal is to get you ready to get the next, get that institutional round. That's what we're trying to do. So people wonder, sometimes why we do the things we do. It's not about our investment. It's about that next stage of investment and getting you ready for that, particularly, frankly, for first-time entrepreneurs, people of color, and women. And so our goal is to, that's about social impact. How do we get more folks involved? And so on that same vein, on the social innovation side, Sally, we might look at an opportunity that we can invest in that's not quite ready for institutional capital or wouldn't be ready because it won't scale for whatever reason. But over time, they could be a couple of $1 million, pay great wages, hire good employees, and maybe over time, over 6, 7 years, whatever the time frame is, maybe pay us back 1x on our money. You know what? I will sit here and celebrate that victory as much as I would celebrate getting back a 10x on, on what we do. So the point being is that we're going to be looking for opportunities that are, I didn't say this, but technology enabled, that drive. And so the example that I give many times, again, aging myself, is if my friend George Jefferson came back and started a cleaning business. And with that cleaning business, he cleaned clothes with some cool technology, better, faster, cheaper than everybody else, or delivered those clothes in some Uber-like fashion. I want to be able to say, is George a tech entrepreneur masquerading as a cleaning business, or is he a cleaning business super leveraging technology to change the scale, the defensibility, and or the customer experience for that? And that's the whole point, is how do you use technology in these retail and service sectors to create defensibility, to create scale, or to change the experience such that there's a new value creation for that individual. Again, they may never get to a point where we can get them to institutional capital. That's okay, but they have changed that community, and that's a lot of what I see up here. They've changed that community through technology. Hope that answered your question.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Yeah, I know. Gotta let everybody hear you, bro.
No, it's the people all over.
Exactly.
So Troy, thank you so much for being here today. I had a question.
Your name?
I'm Sumit Luthra.
Sumit, thank you.
As far as TEDCO is concerned, what is the selection criteria for companies that come into your fold? And once they do, and state of Maryland provides funding to them, you mentioned 1x versus 10x return. So is it like a venture funding type arrangement? And what is it that the entrepreneurs themselves or founders are getting in terms of mentoring and relationships and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I knew I want to answer all the questions, so I'm going to definitely refer all of you to our website, tedcomd.com, which has a ton of stuff there. And Tammy and her team do an outstanding job of keeping that updated. But to answer your question directly, so each of those, whether you're in the pre-seed builder fund, seed, or MVF, there's different criteria. And so we actually have a kind of an algorithm that allows you to put something in, and we can help determine what is the best fund. And by the way, we have this thing called One TEDCO. So it doesn't matter which door you come into TEDCO, and no matter how you fill out that form, we're going to make sure you have the full breadth. And so I love talking to companies. We've got a number of them, for instance, at UMBC, BW Tech's incubator, that have gone through all they moved from being an MII company to a builder fund company to a seed company to an MVF. And we have had companies that have done that whole value chain within TEDCO. So I'm going to tell you that each one has a different criteria based off of that. And it would take me forever to go through all this, but I'd encourage you to go to that. But when you come into that, regardless of the funding, you are open to all the other, what I call those foundational resources, access to our market databases, access to the incubators, to the incubator network that we have access to lawyers. If you need an IP lawyer, how do you get that? We're actually building a talent portal with a number of our friends in Maryland. How do you get access to talent? Because we recognize that many times you don't have the access to go to Indeed, or you don't want to go put something on Indeed. You want to be able to kind of on your own find talent that you need, or you're looking for talent. And also, how do you also find ways to make sure that employees number 2, 3, 4 are from a diverse population? And so we're doing that through our talent portal that we're launching with a number of friends. I mentioned the notion of time. We've launched with our friends at Commerce and the University System of Maryland a thing called the Maryland Entrepreneur Hub. Because here's the challenge. We got all these great resources in Maryland, and I know you do too here in Virginia, but what's the problem? You got to go seek them out. You got to go spend time seeking them out. So what the Entrepreneur Hub does with a company out of Baltimore called EcoMap, you put in your profile, and we bring them to you. We save you that minute. And the goal over time is that it's going to get such intelligence through this AI algorithm that's in it that it'll actually even pre-qualify you. And what I really want to get to, well, this is where I really get excited because we have enough information about you, is that before you get to that next trigger point in your trajectory as a company, we're presenting to you before you even know you need the resources. Before you even know you need something, we're going to bring those to you. And so we have all those things available to our companies, not just the money. Yes, we have advisors. I'm talking to Sunil about how we leverage his network. And so we've talked to a number of other folks who have other networks. I don't pretend that we have it all. We don't. And so it's about how do we stitch it together and how do we scale up that stitching. I hope that answers your question. But I would very much encourage all of you on that question to go visit our website for more information. In the back.
Hi, this is Mark Abrams, the CTO at Harmonia. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for entrepreneurs that have grown their companies to share knowledge back.
Yep.
To help other companies. You know, we use the SBIR vehicle really early in our journey too.
Yep. And I want to go back because I didn't fully answer the last part of your question. I didn't answer. Yes, I'll get to your question. Yes, when we invest, we're investing as venture capitalists. And so we're doing equity-based investments. We normally use, because these are such early stage, we're normally using some type of convertible note type of instrument to do it. That convertible note may or may not, we'll probably have some valuation triggers based off of the funding rounds that go forward. But yes, we are doing, and normally the way we end up, quote, making money or getting our returns is we're selling into future rounds. So we might sell into a D or whatever round where they need our shares for a variety of reasons. So for instance, last night I just signed some documents for a company that we had to sell, one because they were moving out of state, but they also needed our shares. We were there for like less than 3 years and got a 3.5x return money on money. So I mean, we do pretty good on that. So thank you for that. So yes, to your question, very much. And as I mentioned, I'm trying to even work with Bob here in Virginia, Bob Stoll with the Virginia CIT. How do we make sure, because what we haven't done as good a job on, and I'll be very honest, is making sure our portfolio, all of our portfolio companies know about one another, know about the technology opportunities within our portfolio, know about the potential customer opportunity in our portfolio. And the same thing with Bob. Bob said the same thing about his portfolio. And how do we make sure across Potomac that there is this scale that gets created? So we're doing that. But absolutely, we use our entrepreneurs that have been successful. They come back many times as network advisors. They come back. We have this thing called the Prelude Pitch. They come back and help. That's kind of our Shark Tank-like, a nice Shark Tank-like thing that we do. And they come back and help give guidance and counsel to entrepreneurs. To your point, to feedback into that. Absolutely, we do that. So thank you for that question. Again, I can't thank you enough, Ty DC, for having me this morning. I apologize. I have to leave. I fit this in. I got to get back across the Potomac. For those who don't know, I get across the Potomac. And so, again, thank you all. Have a great conference.
Thank you. Well, 1 minute. Let me just thank you so much. Yeah, here is a
thank you.
Appreciation.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Y'all be well. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much, Troy.